Who else wants to wake up pain-free? Part 2. Hi, welcome everybody. It's Jason Barlow, RMT. I'm here as your therapist, as your coach, to help you transform any stress, tension, and pain into health, happiness, and vitality. A couple of weeks ago, I shared with you my part 1 of who wants to wake up pain-free. Remember, in the description below is the opportunity to copy and paste into a browser, and you can read more about this particular article I wrote about a year ago. Part 1, we alluded to the fact that it's more about the health of the body upon the bed than it is the health of the bed. In respect of, I'm asked this question quite often: what's the best pillow? What's the best bed? To which my answer is always the same. And I know people who spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on getting the newest and the best, and still they're in the same issues. Why? Because they've not addressed the core issue at hand, which is the health of the body, right? How we stretch, how we sit, how we move and function, our posture and so forth is the underlying determination or determinant of why it is that we have poor sleep or we're uncomfortable, we have this chronic neck pain that seems to arise when we wake up in the morning. So do take that on board and test it out for yourself, because what I was talking about part 1 is the fact that as young kids, we would be sleeping in all sorts of positions, and it almost didn't matter what position we were in. We would have a good sleep, in contorted positions, wake up and we'd be alert and sharp and ready to go, no stiff neck, nothing. But as we age, we seem to have those issues. Why? Go back to part 1. You can review more about that. Part number 2. So what are the common symptoms of a poor sleep if we're not getting good sleep at night? And they range. This is just my short list. This is based upon my experience more than anything. The biggest one I see, especially in one of my kids: headaches, migraine, fatigue, and lethargy. Aching joints and muscles, especially if you're a workaholic, and or a workaholic. Reduced athletic performance and reduced work performance. Anxiety, agitation, and irritability. I see that in my teenagers. Easier to get frustrated and angry. I see that in my teenagers. And it can lead to then even more significant conditions, which include insomnia and possibly even sleep apnea, which again I alluded to in part 1. If you want to learn more about sleep apnea and the options to get sleep tests done to see if that's applicable for you, I definitely would explore it. Myself, I had this done a couple of years ago, and I was surprised. I was actually positive. I was a mild case, but nonetheless, my wife is quite happy that I have this sleep apnea machine, because it actually helps mitigate, control my snoring, which never was a problem for me. I don't know what the problem was. Okay, so optimal sleep hygiene is what we're getting into today. So I believe it is time to start considering the many facets to optimal nutrition. When we talk about nutrition, we typically think exclusively of our diet. I'd argue even more important to our nutrition would be what we feed our mind. Have you noticed that's a general theme of what I get into in these presentations, is all revolving around the happy aspect of your well-being? Because I guarantee this to you, just to test it out for yourself. If you are happy, your physiology, biology will respond in accordance with that tune of happiness. And when you're unhappy, guess what? The same thing happens. Your physiology and biology respond to the tune of unhappiness. Our physiology doesn't quite understand the difference between the two. We psychologically understand the difference between the two. It's just responding to what it is that's being pervaded by the mind. And so where I was going with this today is that, with respect of a great researcher, Professor Sapolsky, I highly recommend go on YouTube and put in "stress, portrait of a killer" and watch that 50-minute documentary. If you even stop listening to me now, you go watch that. I guarantee you're going to get some benefit from watching it. Now, in his book, also, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, he highlights that as humans, we are commonly in a heightened sense of a stress response unnecessarily for most of our day. And that's related to the coffee that we're drinking, the high carbohydrate diet, the stimulation of electromagnetic gadgets and devices and music and rah, rah, rah. It's almost a rah, rah, rah constantly going on. We almost seemingly find these forms of distraction. Why? Because temporarily we think it's bringing us the type of happiness that we're looking for. And it takes us away from these thoughts that just come into our mind, right? Well, at least I'm concentrating on the screen. And on one regard, yeah, it works, right? That's why we keep doing it. But the question we got to ask is if that's really serving us in the long run. So everything we're doing typically day to day is creating a stress response in our biology. And we have two little glands near our kidneys in our lower back called the adrenal glands. And it's a small reservoir that houses stress hormones, particularly adrenaline and cortisol. There are others, but adrenaline and cortisol are the two I'm talking about today, because when you have excitation in your body on any form of source or coming from any form of source, either we just feel excited or we respond to somebody scaring us, or we just see something on the news that startled us, or we read a book and we're afraid, or we watch a movie and we feel, you get where I'm going. And that's happening by way of what we're watching and content that's coming in, but it's also happening by way of the food content that we're ingesting too. Caffeine is a big one. High carbohydrate diets or malnutrition, right? If we're not getting sufficient energy into our body. These all create a stress response in our body, which give a surge of adrenaline. Now, you've only got so much to serve each and every moment and each and every day. And so when that gets tapped, you have another hormone that's circulating around called cortisol, and it's going around the system, flooding after adrenaline has run its course to help suppress and calm the system. And so that's a natural cycle that's happening. But when that's happening very often throughout your day, that becomes a problem because you've only got a small reservoir for cortisol and adrenaline. Now, I have a lot of patients that always ask me about cortisone injections. They've had cortisone injections. Cortisone is a synthetic reproduction of cortisol. If you take care of your body is its own natural pharmacy, and you'll find that it will provide the necessary amount of cortisol if you follow the guidelines of allowing your body time to heal, recover, recuperate, getting good sleep especially, and then naturally the cortisol will start to do its job and it'll have the levels that it needs to find that restoration and harmonic point. Now, that being said, there are certain conditions related to those adrenal glands that can give rise to imbalances in that chemical, of those hormones and chemicals in your body. So that is something that we definitely need to explore further with some different types of testing. You can get that typically done at your GP, but you have to probe a bit more and be educated before you go and see them. Alternatively, there are holistic health practitioners, naturopaths, and so forth. My phone's doing some skewy things. Let's pull it off that. And they can help you in exploring that avenue a little bit more. Now, what I'll finish with is just a little bit more on Professor Sapolsky's great work, because he just hits the nail on the head. So our early ancestors, until our brains truly evolved to endure more memory and thought processing, would have had high stress, but it would have been very brief. This is what his research is entirely revolved around. So it would have been very brief and it would have been very infrequent. Now in the 21st century, though, a typical scenario in daily life is that we haven't overcome an immediate stress. The kids are late for school. We got to get them there on time. And we're already contemplating several others about to hit us. Not several other people about to hit us, but that could be a scenario too. What I mean by that is we're now late for work. We have heavy highway traffic to deal with. We've got heavy snow. We're in the middle of Canada. Angry driver behind us. Plus the ones we are still trying to resolve from last year. Like we moved to a different house, or our parents aren't well, or we're dealing with an injury we just had 4 months ago. Like, there's so many different sources of potential stress that if we don't have something in place to mitigate that response of stress, our physiology's in this cycle, what we call adrenal fatigue, and it's really hard to pull yourself out of it. And you've got to get educated, because once you get educated, you get more motivated. And once you get motivated, then you're inspired more so to want to do something about it. And you'll start to find, oh, I've read this before, but I didn't take it in at that time. And that's where it starts to sink in more. Why? Because we're ready to receive it. And that's when hopefully you start to apply the science and start to give or experience and see results for yourself and go, oh, I get it now. I see how this works. And so we reassure ourselves, we become our own therapist in many forms, holistically and from a nutritional point of view, from a fitness point of view, even from a massage point of view, but especially from a coach point of view, because there's some incredible coaches out there. There's incredible resources out there. There's a cost. There's a cost of your time and your investment in seeing those people, in investing in their books and research and so forth. And that's beneficial. I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm saying is, how long can you keep doing that for? And if you've gone through cycles where you've hired coaches, but you're still not getting what you want, you've probably not found the real coach and tapped into the real coach, which I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you becoming your own coach. Because ultimately, there's 168 hours in a week. How many hours are you spending with you relative to spending time with a coach who can give you guidelines and so forth? But what's happening in those 167 remaining hours? That's on you. So get yourself educated, get motivated, and take on board what we're sharing here in part 2. Join me next week when I will be covering part 3. And you got to come back for that one, but it's getting into more about sleep hygiene and what you can do, again, to become a better coach for yourself, a better educator for yourself, so you can improve your health, your happiness, and your vitality. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope you found that benefit. Go get my book whilst you can. jasonbarlow.rmt.com, and leave me an email. I'll fire off you a digital copy right away. And if you want the physical copy, well, you should go to Amazon. Just order it on Amazon. It'll be with you within 5 days, wherever you are. Take care. Have a great day.